Well, hello, folks. I'm glad you can be here today. Hope you're doing well. Now, me, I'm doing fine. I'm going to tell you a little story about an episode that happened in Vietnam. And it was just me there, with nobody else. And you'll kind of figure out why I had to do what I had to do. I was sent on a reconnaissance mission that was about 3,000 clicks away from our base camp. Now, this was when you're on a reconnaissance mission, you're out to find out certain information that they give you a heads up on who you might find it out from, where at, or whatever. And depending on the situation, it might just be a head count of what you see or an equipment count. You just don't never know until they give you the particulars on it. But anyhow, I was sent out on a reconnaissance mission, and of course that was also a sniper mission, but it was considered reconnaissance was the top priority. And I had a couple of opportune targets if they happened to show that I could get. But the story is not about that, about them. So I come out of the dark room at about 2:30 in the morning. I guess closer to 2 o'clock, but between 2 and 2:30, because it made my 8 hours in there. And I had to walk about 3,000 meters through the jungle by compass. And by going through the dark, staying in the dark room, it got your eyes ready for the dark. You could see, even when there was no moon, you could see by the stars and navigate your way using your compass and stay on course. You might run into something now and then that you don't see quick enough, but usually not much more than a bush or something. But the main thing you had to watch for was for snakes, and you couldn't see them at all during the night. You just had to play up there and hope you didn't step on one. Usually, if you didn't step on one, they didn't strike at you. As long as you was a couple of feet away, they just drawed back and let you pass. But nevertheless, I left on my mission, and I want to tell you about something that they done in the Air Force at the time that I went in. Ever so many troops, or ever so often, they give one troop a little heavier dose of medical training than they did the others. And I happened to be one of those troops, and I received 225 hours of medical training. Now, I don't know how much that is in college hours or anything like that. All I know is when I come out of it, I could do, in an emergency, I could do tracheotomies, IVs, things of that nature, do an amputation of a limb if I had to, if it was to save somebody's life. But I was no means a doctor, or no means was I a registered nurse. This was just, if you had to do it, do it. And it's come in handy throughout my life at different times, treating people for heat stroke and so forth like that. Come up on accidents and take care of people until a medical professionals got there. But to go on to the story now, if you have a little background on my training, I made it to my observation post to where I was going to do this surveying to get the information that I needed. And we had to use this particular post for many observations. It was right close to a large big Kong stronghold, and we had a teakwood tree that was probably 56 inches wide around like this, and at the top of it there was top of the main body of it before where the limbs started. There was 3 limbs, and each one of them was about this wide, and they branched off, one going this way, one going this way, and one straight out. And you keep this in your mind, because several weeks from now I'll be telling you another story about this tree. But anyhow, I pulled my trigger rope or string, and it was a small rope, and got my main rope down, and climbed the tree, and then pulled my trigger rope and the main rope back up. And I could sit in this nest that we had arranged there, and could not be detected from the ground, as long as you didn't move around a lot. Somebody just walking by underneath, oh, excuse me, tired, walking by underneath the tree, which there's a lot did. They had patrols that went by there all the time, and as long as you were quiet, they didn't ever detect you. And to tell you how high off the ground I was, it was 30 foot. I never did measure, but they was told it was 30 foot. I was told it was 30 foot by some that said they did measure it. And it was that high off the ground. So I got up there at about 5 o'clock in the morning, still dark, and got settled in. I had my sniper rifle with me, and set up for about a 5 to 6 hour stay. Well, along about 7 o'clock, the people that I was looking for came into the compound, and when they come in, I was to count how many was with his party. And so as they unloaded the vehicles and got out, I counted them, got my information, and then I had to watch who went where and how long they stayed. And then I took all that down in my notes, and they was there for about 3.5 hours or 4, and then they left, and they all got back into vehicles and left. Now, the opportune targets that I was to possibly take out never showed, but I got my information, and I waited till the proper time, which they was at around 5 o'clock every day, between 5 and 6, there was a patrol that came back into the compound, and I had to wait for them to come in and go in the compound before I even tried to come out of that nest. So that happened. They went into the compound. I waited till I saw them in the compound, and then I observed the surrounding area before I started to come down, and there was no movement, no noise of any type, and the patrols were usually talking Vietnamese and going on when they was coming down that path on back to the compound. So I felt pretty assured that I was by myself and was not going to get detected. And so I came down the tree, and after I got down, I took my trigger rope and pulled back up into the tree, and then hid my trigger rope where it was supposed to be hid. And then I started making my way back my 3,000 meters to the base camp of Tuiwa. Well, I'd gone about 1,000 meters, to 1,000 to 1,500, a leadway in there. actually remember quite how far I'd went, but I close to between a click and a half and a click and a quarter anyhow. And I was out of the detection zone for that compound. And walking along that path, there was a lot of things that it was still daylight, and I would know if it was different than what it was the last time I was over it. And walking along that clearing, a little clearing, all of a sudden, something hit me in the lower part of the body and knocked me about 25 to 30 feet. Now that's just my estimate because I went through the air and it's hard to tell how far you actually go. And when I landed, I was addled and I had to kind of get myself together. And when I got myself together, I started checking for damage, and my left leg and my pants leg was torn of my uniform, and my left leg was cut to the bone. Now, I never felt a thing. It done it so fast. And I was bleeding profusely. I had one artery that was cut and one vein that was cut. And I had to clamp both of them off. Now, in that training that I had before I went to Vietnam, I had a pack with me. It was an emergency pack. I had, I believe it was hydrocodone. I had Novocaine, or it was called something else, xylocaine. And I had all kinds of suture equipment. I had catgut. I had what I call 2-pound fishing line, about 10 or 15 feet of it. And I had clamps to clamp off arteries or anything I need to clamp off. And I had needles that you sew stitches with. And I commenced getting them out. First thing I got out was my emergency little tablets that you put in water that you drink. I had to get that water as pure as I could, so I dropped 2 in there, shook it up real well. And when I got that britch leg cut open just a little bit more and opened it up some, I cleaned that cut off on my leg. Now, I also, as I started using this equipment, I put myself against a tree and got my legs propped up to where my feet was above my heart. I was kind of laying back on my back against that tree. But there was no log laying there that wasn't too long, and looked like it'd been knocked off of a tree that had been hit by a bomb, and it was about this long, and I scooted it over to put my feet up on. And when I got situated to where I was comfortable and was able to work on myself, I clamped that artery and that vein off at the point of pressure. A vein would be going toward the heart and an artery going away from the heart. So I clamped them off on the point of pressure. And easy to tell because that's the part that's squirting out of. Of course, the vein just oozes. It don't squirt a whole lot. But anyhow, I got them clamped off, and I used a 4-point stitch. I stitched top, bottom, and each side of the artery first. And once I got that stitched, I had Marlace plastic, which is a plastic that made by either DuPont or 3M or somebody. I can't remember now who it was, but it adhered to body parts, especially on the inside. If you had a punctured lung, you could use that on it and seal that lung up and make it to wherever you need to go. But I took that and I cut little strips about that wide, and then because the artery was about like that, about the end of my finger, and I wanted to go at least 1/4 of an inch on each side of where it was severed. And so when I got it stitched off on all 4 sides, it's surprising how quick an artery or a vein will start to heal itself and start healing. But not fast enough for me, so I put that Marlace plastic around it just like a Band-Aid. And once it got completely around it and stuck, it was there to stay. It wasn't going to let go of the material. If it had 10 minutes to stay in place, it was going to stay there forever. And so I done the artery that way, and then I done the vein that way. And of course, after it stayed stuck together for a few minutes, I had to open it up so the blood could flow down through my foot and everything, because it was numb at that particular time. But I had to get that blood flow through there. And so while that blood flow was going through there, I took the other one and kept it clamped off and put a 4-point stitch on it, and then put the Marlace plastic around it. Now, once I got that done, I cleaned it all off again, and I started working on the muscles. Now, the muscles, I had 3 layers that was cut all the way to the bone. And that top muscle, the one that come in from each side and lapped over one another under it, and I think the one that came from the outside is the one that was cut all the way down. And then the next one was the one that was right next to the bottom of next to the bone. So I stitched it up first, and then after I stitched it up, I done the crossover muscles, and only had to stitch one of them. And then after that, I did the top muscle. But however, the top muscle, the bottom portion of it, had drawn down to my kneecap. And I didn't have a forceps or anything. I could go in there and get a hold of it and pull it back up. So I left well enough alone, and I took that muscle and pulled it down over where I had sewed the layer below it, pulled it down over top of it, and held it there and stitched it until it got drawn down to my regular muscle on the second layer. And the only thing I could do. And then I took a Marlace plastic. I cut a place big enough that would cover all those top layers, and I covered it and smoothed it out good. And then I held it for approximately 30 seconds to make sure it stuck good, which it did. I never did have a problem with it sticking. So then, that was all done with catgut. After I got all the muscles and everything tied in, then I started stitching the skin. And I used that 2-pound, what I call 2-pound fishing line, because it could be taken out. The others had to rot out, and the body had to dissipate them, right along with the Marlace plastic. So after I got it stitched up, I think it, if I remember correctly, it took me right at 32 rounds of stitches. Of course, I kept them all together. I didn't tie them one at a time. I put the first one in, and then I tied a loop knot in it, and then I just run it around and around and around. I had old needles that was bent in like a half moon, and I just kept circling them in and out with a little pair of pliers that I had. And when I got to the far end from where I started, and I run it back under each stitch, and then wrapped it with the loop on the other end, and drawed it tight, and tied them, and then Marlace plastic that. Now, it was the best I could do under the circumstances, because I had to get out of there before it got too late, because I still had right close to 1,500 to 2,000 meters to walk to get off the mountain and back into the base camp. So I washed everything off good, and you can wash that marlace plastic off, and it won't cause it to come loose or anything. It's a wonderful material. I don't know whether they still use it or not. I'm sure they probably do. But I walked slowly, but I walked at a steady pace. But I didn't do any extra jarring that I didn't have to. I walked as smooth as I could and let this leg down as soft as could each time. And when I got back to the base, it probably had been almost completely dark for about 15 or 20 minutes, but it was getting to where you could still see as long as you know where you was going, and wasn't having to watch for any trip lines or anything like that, because you wasn't going to see them. You'd have to feel your way, but I could still see good enough that I could tell if there was anything had changed since I went out. And you had to watch for that every time you come in. But I made it to the infirmary. I didn't walk back through the tunnel. I come right straight out to where one of the security men was at, and told him to call me an ambulance, because I'd walked about as far as I'd wanted to walk on this leg. And so they come and got me, and of course they was always watching for us to come back, anybody that was out like that. They knew they was out, and they was waiting for them to get back. And so once I got back, they took me to the infirmary, and the emergency nurses and male nurses that was on duty, we had about 50-50 male, 50, male and female, and they took me into x-ray, and they x-rayed that, and the doctor was in charge of reading the x-rays. He come out, and he says, "Sarge, says, everything is looking good. You done a good job. There's no bleeding inside. We can see the work you done, and you done right on tying that what's called off on the top layer, because that one that was down there had already adhered to that muscle down there and those tendons, and said that'll all take care of itself." Said you done the right thing by tying that off on top there, and you can still see today the little indentation where I tied that to those upper muscles. But anyhow, put me off about a week to light duty, and I didn't have to go on to more missions until that got healed. I was on light duty for about a week, and then I started working in, I believe it was on that particular job in the cafeteria, checking in soldiers as they come in to eat and so forth, which didn't bother me at all. I got to eat more that day. But anyhow, that's the way it happened. And before I left that area, I looked around, tried to find what I could find that hit me that way. And I never found no bungee trees that was pulled over and anchored between trees and pulled back so they could come at you in a quick spout. I couldn't find nothing like that. Couldn't find no mortar indentations, and I couldn't find no artillery indentations. But now remember, artillery and mortar can throw shrapnel for 150 to 200 yards, depending on the size shell they are. So it could have been a shell that come by and hit me. It could have been one of our own. But whatever it was, I didn't hear it. And if it wasn't that, it could have been we had some massive boar hogs over there, and it could have been one of them to come in and caught me with a sizer or, a tusk sticking out, and that could have hit me. But whatever it was, it cut me just like you took a scalpel and just cut it real quick, and it just cut it straight to the bone. Now that scar, when it went all the way side to side on that, was only about that long, or it was about that long. But now that scar is only about that long. I think it's about 5 inches now. It used to be about 7 to 8. And I used vitamin E on it all the time, and honey. And that done a lot of good for it. really knocked the scar down, and it had glycerin in it. The doctor made that up for me, and I used it, and it knocked the scarring way down on it. And I could use it for years, and it would get less and less all the time. But it's not hardly. You can see it; it's still there, but it's not near as bad as it used to be. So I hope y'all enjoyed this story. Like I say, wasn't nobody there with me, and I'm the only one it mattered to. But it's funny. Things can happen. You just don't know what does it, and that's the way it was on this one. And to this day, I don't know what it was, and it don't matter. I still got my leg, still got my life, and that's all I worried about. So y'all can chew on that in a while, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please subscribe and give me a like. And I'll let you go for now. God bless you, and He will if you let Him. And try to make somebody smile if you can, because you never know. It might just change the world. Y'all have a good one. God bless you.